Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to continue my segments on discussing tactics on specific armies. Today I'm going to have a wee look back at Adeptus Mechanicus now that we have the Codex. So I have done Adeptus Mechanicus already, where I've discussed sort of the rules within the index. I think I talked about special rules and canticles and all that, and you can see that in my first sort of video. I won't go back and discuss them again because a lot of them haven't quite changed. So in this video I'm going to be covering updated special rules, stratagems, artifacts, warlord traits and a few updates. So that's quite a wee bit to go over. So let's dive in straight away with special abilities, and there's only really one that I need to sort of add in to what I talked about previously, and this is going to be Soldiers of the Machine Gods. Now this is a very similar ability with other codexes getting this as well, and it's basically your troop choices. How can I describe it? So if your army is battle forged, all troop units in the Adeptus Mechanicus detachment gain this ability. Basically, if you have a unit with this ability within range of an objective, they control it even if your opponent has more models within range than you. If your opponent has a similar ability, which at the moment I believe Space Marines, Chaos, Grey Knights, Death Guards and Astra Militarum should have this ability as well, then you go back to who has the most units within range of that objective. Basically sort of, you know, objective secured, it makes your troops that little bit more important for getting objectives. So I think every codex is more or less going to get this ability, but it's important to remember you have it for your troops. If you're contesting your opponent for an objective and they've got heavy support sitting there, nah, your troops take it even if there's one and they've got 105, as long as they don't have another troop within range with this ability. So very, very simple, you know, going to be used in point games more than anything, but that's the main sort of additional special ability that Adeptus Mechanicus got in their codex. So with that, let's move on to the good stuff, which is obviously the Forgeworld dogmas. So this is sort of a new thing for codexes now, that they're trying to bring a bit more into, you could say, the lore, if you will. But it's basically all the different factions within a particular sort of army set. So you had that with Chaos, and you had it with Space Marines, and I think this is the first non-marine army to get it, and I think we're going to see that within Astra Militarum, which we have. We'll probably see it with all the other armies coming forward. Very exciting, gives a little bit more options to all the forces. I absolutely love it, I think it's really interesting. So let's have a look at the abilities for Adeptus Mechanicus. Now you have to forgive me when it comes to Adeptus Mechanicus as well, because I'm horrific at pronouncing some of their names, because they're some of the trickiest within all the codexes. So forgive me if I get them wrong. You can get me into trouble in the comments, go, no Ross, you tried your hardest but you pronounced it way, way off. So we're going to begin with Agrippina A, that's with a double A, and then another A at the end. And they've got the ability called Staunch Defenders. When firing Overwatch, units with this dogma hit on a 5+ instead of only 6s, irrespective of modifiers. This is a pretty situational Forgeworld dogma at best, and you only see it when you are facing against certain armies. So if you're playing against Tau or Astra Militarum, this is not going to be the most useful one, because they're not going to be usually coming towards you and charging, I think, more or less, so you're not really going to get an advantage of this dogma. But if you're playing against forces such as Orcs, Tyrannids or Khorne Heavy List, then just getting that extra bit of Overwatch at 5+, meaning you're going to hit with your Overwatches on a third of your shots rather than a sixth of your shots, is going to be pretty good. Generally I'd keep this one in mind if you are playing against a sort of assault heavy army, but certainly if you're going to be gunlining it with another force, ignore it, not going to happen. But assault army's pretty good. Next we have Gaia, your refusal to yield. This is a pretty interesting one. Roll d6 whenever a model with this dogma is slain or flees. On a 6, that model refuses to yield. Either the wound that slew it is ignored, or that model does not flee. However, Forgeworld, which would be Gaia, units with this dogma cannot fall back unless there is a friendly Forgeworld character on the battlefield. As far as dogmas that augment survivability, this is not one of my favourites. The fact this only takes into effect on sort of like the last wound or when they're fleeing, rather than other armies such as Death Guard's Disgusting Resilience or Necron's Reanimation Protocol. They can have an effect on sort of multiple wounds, if you will. Well, this one, if you've got like Doom Crawlers and everything, it's only going to be the last one, so not the best on that side. You know, I would have liked it if it was like sort of, you know, Disgusting Resilient, where you got, you know, that sort of save with all the wounds that they suffered. However, it is not a sort of army rule, it's a faction rule, so I can sort of understand it there. Interestingly, this is when a model is slain, so it does apply if you start supercharging your Plasma Calvers and you can actually roll to save yourself here, but it's not going to happen often. But equally, it's also going to be fun when your Doomcrawler suffers a last fatal wound and you roll that, you know, 6 and you're like, not today. But in terms of survivability, it's probably not my favourite. I think there's much better options to keep your whole army more survivable than this one out there. But certainly interesting that it takes into effect when they're fleeing, or when they do flee, or if they're slain by their own overheating, which is kind of cool. Might help there. Next up, we've got one of the sort of favourite names, Forgeworlds, Metallica, which their Forgeworld rule is called Relentless March. If a unit with this dogma advances, it can ignore the penalty for firing assault weapons and treat all rapid fire weapons it is armed with as assault weapons until the end of the turn, e.g. rapid fire 1 is treated as assault 1 weapons. Overall, this dogma will see use if you're using a heck of a lot of Vanguard. Ignoring the penalties to advancing with assault weapons is a huge advantage to the mobility of Vanguard, meaning they're going to be a lot more reliable to hit and keep moving forward. Certainly helps with the Plasma Calvers, because if you are planning to overcharge with them, it reduces the risk that if you advance and you start getting -1s to your hit and you're going to get more reliable 1s and slay your model, this helps try and negate that a wee bit. If you are going like Rangers and you're going to be moving them, so you're turning their rapid fire weapons into assault weapons, kind of handy if you want to keep your Rangers on the move, but generally I still find that Rangers are best suited sitting in your back line and taking transonic arquebuses and basically sniping and using their incredible range. So I don't see that being a great advantage for, say, Rangers, but certainly if you're playing Vanguard heavy, it's going to really improve their mobility, which you know, for Ad Mech is required. So if you are playing Vanguard, and especially now that they've had a points decrease, not a huge one, but they've had a decrease nonetheless, this is going to be very handy, and especially if you're going to be playing ones where you have to cover as much ground as possible, kind of useful. Really quite nice if you're going to be using Vanguard, not so much for else on that one. I'm a huge Vanguard fan, so yeah, cool. Next up we have Lucius, the Solar Blessing. When making saving throws, units with this dogma treat enemy attacks with armor penetration characteristic of -1 as having armor penetration of 0 instead. Another dogma which is generally geared towards survivability. Not terrible, but not great. If this had been -1 to all armor penetration characteristics to a minimum of 0, then I would say this is almost like a must take, if not overpowered. A whole army that would be reducing, you know, armor penetration by 1 is pretty good. This may be useful against certain forces such as Necrons, because their Gauss weapons are all sort of -1, and it basically brings them back down to 0, which is very, very handy. But keep in mind as well for Space Marine forces, especially Primaris ones, or forces using heavy bolters, it does reduce their armor penetration quite significantly. Really, really good, I feel, for like your heavier units such as Doom Crawlers, because they've got amazing save. You want to try and keep that as high as possible, so it is kind of useful for that. So yeah, if you are playing sort of Necrons, keep this one in mind, because it's really going to reduce their Gauss ability significantly, because because you can bet that, you know, Necrons, unless they're taking Tesla, they're going to be going for their -1 to armor penetration. So I like that one a lot, but it's again kind of geared towards what kind of force you are playing. I do also believe that, if I'm wrong, it does apply in the combat phase as well, because it just says enemy attacks with -1. So kind of handy in that one as well. Keep that in mind if you are playing up an enemy force that has combat with -1 armor penetration. It should apply there as well. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Next up we have Mars, Glory to the Omnissiah. Each time you randomly determine which canticle of the Omnissiah is being canted, roll 2 dice instead of 1. All units with this dogma receive the benefit of both results instead of just the result of the first dice. If duplicates are rolled, no additional canticle is canted this turn. So this is going to be sort of the go-to dogma for people if they want to get the full advantage of Call. Well, it's going to have to be, because Call is part of Mars, so this is generally going to be the sort of dogma you're going to use. Otherwise, why are you bringing Call? As he can manipulate both the dice so that you never suffer the effects of duplicates, which is really handy, and you'll always guarantee you will get 2 canticles this turn. Overall, it's not a bad dogma, however it relies on the randomness of the canticles table. And secondly, with 2 of the most advantageous abilities, which is Shroud Sun, which is always amazing. That's your whole army with the Forgeworld rule is counted as being cover, so that's excellent. And the other one I find most useful for certainly my playstyle is Benediction of the Omnissiah, which, if you're playing Call or your Warlord is, you know, bubbled so that he is giving a huge advantage to the units around him, you're already sort of getting that ability on a lot of your forces anyway, so it kind of makes that a bit redundant. Honestly, I like the thought behind this dogma, the fact that you can get more canticles and more abilities. However, I'm just not the biggest fan of canticles at the moment. You know, I'd probably say you'd get the most advantage from this if you're playing a close combat force, close combat Ad Mech force. And if you are, you are braver than me. I still can't work out how to do a close combat one. Please tell me how to. I'll buy the models and I'll make it happen at one point. And then you could just go get Castellan with Power Fists. I'm working on it. But basically this could really help you get the 2 main abilities for the close combat benefits, which are Chant of Remorseless Fist and I think Invocation of Machine Might. Get both those and you're going to turn your Ad Mech force into a much more powerhouse for your close combat segments. Again, as I said, I'm not the biggest fan of canticles. I've said it, it's a handy ability, but 1, it is random, and 2, I just don't feel it buffs the shooting phase as much as I would like, because you have HQ units that can already do some of those abilities anyway. Though Shroud Slam is pretty awesome, so getting that more reliably, excellent, and Call certainly does help out a lot as well. Next up we have Ryza, red in Cog and Claw. You can reroll wound rolls of 1 in the fight phase for units with this dogma. This would almost be the must-take dogma for me if it would only switch the fight phase to the shooting phase. Now, rerolling 1s on wounds is not something we reliably have in the Ad Mech. We have a lot of reroll hits, but not reroll wounds. And if this was shooting, I'd be like, this is the one for me, unless it was fielding Call. However, that is not the case, unfortunately. So if you're going down the route of close combat based Ad Mech, again, you'll see a big advantage with this for things like Ruststalkers, Infiltrators, your Castellan robots, etc. Power Fist, basically your combat elements are really going to see a big advantage of being able to reroll 1s to wounds. You know, it'd be interesting if, you know, as the dogmas are quite combat, you know, this is an interesting combat ability for the dogmas. Again, we kind of need to have more transport abilities to get our forces into combat reliably without taking damage, and we don't have deep strikes reliably either. So yeah, again, not bad if you are going to go down the combat route. Again, you're braver than me, and I will try it one of these days. and if you certainly get some mechanical abilities such as rerolling ones to hit in combat, +1 strength, this is going to be terrifying. But again, I don't play combat so much, so I haven't experienced yet. But I do see great benefit if we do get sort of more combat units for Ad Mech. Next up, and I'm going to probably pronounce this wrong, is Stratagems or Stratagems 8, which their protocol, their forge rule is Shroud Protocols. Your opponent must subtract 1 from their hit rolls when shooting at units with this dogma if they are more than 12 inches away. So I believe this is the 3rd appearance of this rule so far. We've seen Raven Guard with it, we've seen Alpha Legion with it, both sharing similar, if not, I think the exact same rules for it. This one's probably going to play a lot into a lot of people's play styles, especially if you're facing against gunline armies. So if you're playing Astra Militarum or Tal forces who have sort of average hit rolls at best, this is going to be excellent because it's really going to hinder their shooting phase at you because they really don't want to get close to you. However, if you're playing forces like Tyrannids, if you're playing Orcs, or even if you're playing Elder, it's not going to be so easy because Orcs aren't going to, certainly just going to reduce their shooting at you, but they're going to mainly aim to sort of get within your lines and assault you anyway. And Elder usually have the mobility to subvert the 12 inches, they might get a bit closer to you to try and stop you from benefiting from it. But overall you can't go wrong with this one. I mean, -1 is basically your enemies shooting for the whole time is excellent. So, you know, I see a lot of codexes are probably going to get this. I haven't checked the Astra Militarum one yet to see if they've got it, but I'm going to guess they might. And it's generally really, really good. So I'm a big fan of the Stratagems 8 Shroud Protocols, really, really good. I think for in terms of survivability, that's one of the best Forgeworlds to go for. So that's the Forgeworlds there. Let's move on to the Stratagems. Now the Stratagems are obviously greatly expanded now from what they were in the rulebook, and mainly obviously if you've got Codex you're going to have a heck of a lot more options. Now I believe in the Ad Mech force there is 28 total stratagems to choose from. Now this is a series of general ones, there's Forgeworld ones, and then there's a few for knights as well. And again, like my Chaos recap, I'm not going to talk about them all because there's 28 of them and I could go into them all in increasing detail, and that'd be a video in itself, and I could do that in the future if you guys think I should discuss all the stratagems, I could do it. But I do tend to go into a lot of detail and that'd be really, really long. But what I'm going to do is basically discuss the ones that would help my playstyle and the ones that I think are the best. And please comment below if you think there's better stratagems out there for the Adeptus Mechanicus. So here's some of the top ones I've seen. We'll begin with Elimination Volley. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase if a Forgeworld Cataphrone Destroyer unit from your army is within 6 inches or Forgeworld Castellan Robot unit from your army. You can add 1 to the hit rolls for both units in this phase. Cost 2 command points. Castellan Robots and Cataphrone Destroyers are 2 of my favourite units who unleash a huge amount of pain, and adding 1 to their hit roll certainly really does help. They don't have the best ballistic skill and weapon skill most of the time, I think it's just 4+, so getting that extra +1 is excellent. Add in a Dominus or better yet Call and you get your rerolls, and you're going to unleash a torrent of firepower onto your opponent, and certainly for turn 1 volley it's going to be probably quite destructive. It goes really well with the next stratagem I'm going to talk about, which is Banharic Overdrive. Use this stratagem at the end of any phase to change the battle protocol of one of your units of Castellan Robots. That unit's battle protocol cannot then be changed again for any reason for the remainder of the battle. Cost 1 command point. So if you're a big Castellan Robot fan like myself, and especially of Protector Protocol, this is a very important stratagem. Why? Because usually to change your protocols and you begin an Aegis protocol, the only way to traditionally do that is with a Datasmith, and the effect only takes into effect the following turn. So it's kind of handy because, for instance, if your opponent feels a lot of snipers, it might just kill your Datasmith, and then you can't then change the protocols on your Crystalline robots, this gives you the ability to, another way to change them almost immediately, which is excellent. So that's kind of handy, very helpful. I highly recommend it. I've managed to use it and it's been very handy, but it does leave you stuck with that protocol for the rest of the game. And if you are using Protector Protocol, which is the one I think is you get more shots, it does mean you're stuck in place for the whole game, and that can leave you isolated. Your opponent could then just like surround them with a survivable unit, and if you don't have power fists, which you won't if you're shooting, you're basically going to be stuck there for quite a wee while. You may also be tempted to not take a Data Smith and just say, I'm going to use this in Bindharic Overdrive and save my points from not using a Data Smith. I'd still say a Data Smith does, have its use, for the sheer fact they can recover wounds on crystalline robots. Now, I don't need to tell you guys, it's really handy to keep your models alive, especially ones like crystalline robots. So it sort of goes without saying, take a Data Smith, they're quite cheap, and they still do add in another way to change protocol and also recover wounds on crystalline robots. But it gives you the other option, so I definitely see that one getting a lot of use. Next up we have Protector Doctrine Imperative. Use a stratagem before a Scutari unit, and only Scutari, from your army attacks in the shooting phase. Add 1 to the hit rolls you make for the unit in this phase. If the unit has an enhanced data tether, or broad spectrum data tether, you can add 2 to the hit roll instead. Cost 1 command point. I really like this stratagem. Sure, it's technically a sort of ability that Scutari used to have army wide, which was excellent, and it used to be arguably better because I think you could get like +3 to your ballistic skill back in 7th. But it's welcome to have it back, even as a stratagem, and it is only 1 command point. This makes a lot of units become sort of like 2 to hit, which is fantastic. And if you've got like data tethers, which are predominant on dune crawlers and things, it makes them a lot better as well. For instance, if you have an Icarus array, which I think would be usually 4s to hit ground units, it turns them into 2+ to hit both ground units and air units. So don't use this if you're targeting air units, it seems a bit of a waste. But because Icarus arrays have a huge amount of firepower on them, it really makes them kind of handy to start hitting on 2s, and if you've got like a Dominus or Call near them, you're re-rolling those 1s as well, generally excellent. Another thing to keep in mind, however, is that it actually makes your supercharging plasma calibers extremely survivable. Now, if you do roll a 1 to hit, it is always considered a fail no matter what modifiers apply. However, for the result of, and I believe it's only if you roll a 1, it still counts as a miss even with modifiers. But if you have modifiers when you are supercharging, you've not technically actually rolled a 1, it's gone up to a 2, and where you usually be slain on a 1, you've actually rolled a 2, you've still missed, but you're not slain because of it. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but that simply means that, although, yeah, okay, I missed with plasma, I rolled a 1, but it's actually counted as a 2, you missed, but you survived. Really important to remember that, because you might think, oh, I have to remove one of my plasmas. No, you don't. They're sticking in the fight if you use Protector Doctrine Imperative. So for 1 command point, if you've got a big block of Vanguard and you've got loads of plasma inside them, yeah, it's going to be absolutely devastating. 2s to hit, plasma, and also their huge amounts of shots is excellent, and your plasma may stick around if they supercharge. Excellent, love it. Machine Spirit Resurgent. Use a stratagem at the start of any turn. Pick an Adeptus Mechanicus vehicle or Questor Mechanicus unit from your army. Till the end of this turn, use the top row of the model's damage table, regardless of how many wounds it has left. This ends immediately if the model is reduced to 0 wounds. Cost 1 command point. This is a pretty simple stratagem to understand. Basically, you get another round of max efficiency with the vehicle of your choice. Really handy with dune crawlers, because if they get reduced down to their lowest wounds and they're hitting on 5s, suddenly you're hitting back on 3s and could do quite a lot of damage. However, this can also work for knights who, if they're brought down to I think about 6 wounds, they're hitting on 5s. Not today, you're going to be hitting on 3+ again, and certainly for crusaders, that's going to be terrifying. So you can remind your opponent and say to them, you've reduced my knight down to so many wounds, they're now only going to be hitting at 5s, they're not going to be really efficient. Your opponent might go, do I want to sink in a bunch of Gnar shots to just try and finish them off or concentrate on something else? play tricks of the mind, go, yeah, can't do that much anymore, it'll do some damage but not as much, and then in your turn go, haha, Machine Spirit Resurgent, I'm hitting at max efficiency again. Really, really good. I like this one, mainly because Doom Crawlers and Knights are really hard hitting units. Your opponent will try and bring them down. If they can't destroy them, they'll at least try and drain their efficiency. Though if they know anything about Adeptus Mechanicus, you've probably got ways to bring back their wounds as well, which I'll talk about later. But it is an important one if you've got vehicles to remember that if you want to avoid hitting on 5s, this is the way to go. Next up we have Info Slave Skull. Use the stratagem immediately after your opponent sets up a unit that is arriving on the battlefield as reinforcements within 12 inches of your Adeptus Mechanicus infantry units, so only infantries. Your unit can immediately shoot at the enemy as if it was a shooting phase, but you must subtract 1 from the results from all the resulting hit rolls. Cost 2 command points. So this is another potentially important stratagem, as most armies out there do have the ability to field reinforcements, whether it's through teleportariums, dropping in, etc, etc, and they can be devastating when they arrive. This will give you a chance to cause the damage back to them, hopefully before they cause too much damage to you, and maybe make your opponent think about where they're going to drop. Although it's a good counter and make your opponent think twice, I think it's a bit heavy for 2 command points, and especially how you're going to get -1 to your hit rolls, and especially on Plasma that makes it extremely dangerous. Though it can be argued that 2 command points to effectively start shooting at a unit that drops in would be too cheap, especially on like a big unit blob of Vanguard and your opponent drops in, you're like, I'm still hitting you on 3+. So the -1 seems a bit fair, but maybe not as efficient as I'd hope it to be. Also keep in mind that it says you're shooting as if it was the shooting phase, which I believe Calls and the Dogmas' abilities only apply if it's the shooting phase, so they don't apply in Overwatch, because it does consider it's shooting in the charge phase. So you do get the benefits of rerolls for them, which is excellent, very, very handy. So keep that in mind, that you do get your rerolls in this attack, because it is importantly worded as in the shooting phase. So it's a good deterrent if your opponent drops in a big heavy unit and you want to cause some damage to it, or if you have a chance to, which is quite handy. Next up I'll go with the faction specific, one of the faction specific ones, which is Clandestine Infiltration. Use the stratagem during deployment. You can set up a Stratagems 8, if I got it right, unit from your army in ambush instead of placing it on the battlefield. At the beginning of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins, the unit is revealed. Set up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from any enemy model. Cost 1 command point. So I think we've seen this before again. Our Stratagems 8 just seeing the Raven Guards and Alpha Legion rules and going, hey, we want to be part of that scene, because I'm 90% sure that is exactly their stratagem, faction stratagem as well. Joking aside, it is pretty darn good, and the reason for that is that you can set up one of your heavy hitting close combat units right into your opponent's lines. So you've got Electro Priests, or I think Stalin Power Fist units can really benefit from this, and better yet, it takes into effect during the setup phase. So that means is that you can move in your turn, shoot and assault, and with that move you're almost guaranteed to get your assault no matter what. Really, really good, excellent to have. I really, really recommend it. The other thing that someone pointed out in my Chaos sort of rundown of this is that it doesn't happen in a particular, how to put it, it doesn't happen in a particular phase, it happens before it. So in match plays you can only use a stratagem once per phase, but because this is in deployment you can actually use it multiple times unless they FAQ it, which means you can set up about 3 units using this Clandestine Infiltration and then charge, move and charge. Really good if you get first turn, not great if you lose first turn, because you're probably going to be out in the open for your opponent to fire back at you. But certainly having Stalin Robot Power Fists and Electro Priests right in your opponent's face, and they can move and charge, excellent. correct me if I'm wrong in that one, but it's really, really good. On top of the Stagus 8, minuses to hit as well for units over 12 inches. Now obviously these units won't benefit from it, but your back units will. Really makes it really nice. I really, really like those rules. I haven't had a chance to use them all yet, but really, really good. Next up, I'm going to look at one of the Questor Mechanicus sort of rules. These are the ones that are mainly aimed towards your knights. So the one I'm going to look at in particular is Knight of the Cog. Use this stratagem at the start of any battle round, before determining which canticle of the Omnissiah will be in effect. Select a Questor Mechanicus unit from your army that is within 12 inches of a friendly Adeptus Mechanicus character. That unit gains Canticles of the Omnissiah ability until the start of the next battle round. Cost 1 command point. Now it's important to remember how Canticles of the Omnissiah does work. Everything in a detachment must have Canticles of the Omnissiah to be able to have the detachment to be able to use it. So if you're using, I think, firstly always use this on super heavy auxiliary detachment, which is I think you get one super heavy choice. Don't use on the one where you can get multiple super heavies, because you actually don't benefit from it. All of them have to have Canticles of the Messiah, and I don't think you can feasibly do that in match play, so it would be a big waste. So if you've got one knight, it can benefit from this, as long as you're within 12 inches of Adeptus Mechanicus character. So with a knight, what Canticles do you want? Well, Shell Slam, obviously, -1 to hit is really, really useful, and you wouldn't get that ability unless you used Knights of the Cog. But the one I really like is if you can get Benediction of the Omnissiah, which allows you to reroll ones in the shooting phase, because Knights don't have the ability to benefit from the Tech Priest's or Call's ability to reroll. So that does give them ability to reroll, and if you're going for a Crusader Knight, it just allows you to unleash a heck of a lot of firepower and get some reliable rerolls as well. Certainly if you're using a Knight, I highly recommend this one as well, and I think it is only 1 command point, I said? Yeah, 1 command point, so it's a bargain for that, as long as you do get the Canticle that you are hoping for. I don't use Knights very often, but I do plan to shortly. I do have a Knight fully painted, ready to go, armed to the teeth with guns. So yeah, definitely this is one of the ones I will use. So next up, I am going to talk about the Arcana Mechanicum. Now this is the sort of artifacts and relics for codexes. Everyone now has sort of artifacts and relics that they can use to further augment their armies. You traditionally can only get one, though I believe there are stratagems that can allow you to get more, but you've got to spend command points to use them. Named characters cannot, so just to explain this a wee bit, how this works is if your army is led by an Adeptus Mechanicus Warlord, you can give one of the Arcana Mechanicum items to your Adeptus Mechanicus characters. Named characters cannot have any relics because they've got enough shiny stuff as it is already. Lastly, if the artifact says it replaces specific weapons such as Homicide Axe, you pay for the points for the Homicide Axe, and this simply replaces it. So you can't just go, I've got that relic, make sure you're paying the points, unless it doesn't replace anything, in which case I believe it's free, which is very handy. So for Adeptus Mechanicus, we've got quite a few options because we've got a lot of general choices to choose from, and then we have Forgeworld specific ones as well. So I'm just going to discuss the key ones here because again there's quite a few, and I can go on for quite a wee bit if I wanted to discuss all of them in detail. If you do want me to discuss them in detail, I can do so, let me know in the comments. Now I'm going to actually butcher the pronunciations of these because some of them are difficult, and I'm going to begin with my favourite one, which I might get wrong, which is Autokidakis of Arcana Land. Destroyed that, I'm sorry. At the start of each of your turns, the bearer of this relic heals 1 wound. In addition, when the bearer uses an ability to repair a friendly Adeptus Mechanicus, such as using the rule Master of Machines, you may re-roll the dice to determine how many wounds are regained. This is an excellent addition to a Tech Priest Dominus. Usually I play mine as supportive characters rather than damaging characters, so being able to get a reliable reroll to your recovering wounds on, say, A Gene Crawler is excellent. Really, really nice. You do recover an additional wound every turn. Yeah, that's nice, and you recover wounds as is through your normal ability as well. I can't remember its name, but Tech Priests do recover, I think, D3 wounds a turn. It's D3 plus 1. Excellent. But being able to re-roll that recovery for your other models is excellent. It does work well with a Warlord trait I'm going to talk about later called Necromechanic, which means if you have this artifact plus that Warlord trait, when you're rolling to recover wounds on units, you get a minimum of 2 wounds to a maximum of 4 with rerolls. That is excellent. So that Warlord trait I'll go into later, but with this relic is excellent. Very nice supportive character along with the rerolls as well to hit for Forgeworld units. So Otto Cicadus of Arcana Land, I'm going to butcher your name for a long time because I can see myself using it quite a number of times. Next up we have the Phosphor Phoenix. Models with Phosphor Serpentor only. Phosphor Phoenix replaces the model's Phosphor Serpentor and has the following profile. Range 18, Assault 3, Strength 5, AP minus 3, Damage 1. No bonuses for, and ignores the rule if your opponent has the cover rule, which is kind of handy. Again, I'm focusing on probably Tech Priests here because I believe they're the only characters that can get Phosphor Serpentor, correct me if I'm wrong. And I usually arm my Tech Priest with a Phosphor Serpentor just to give him more guns, and I've found it very underwhelming because the stats of a Phosphor Serpentor I believe are Assault 1, Strength 5, AP minus 1 and Damage 1. So you're basically getting triple the amount of shots and you're getting a lot more AP, which is excellent and will cause a lot more reliable damage. However, again, I prefer supportive abilities, so is it going to be, is your dogmas really going to cause that much damage? He is hitting on 2s, I suppose, and rerolling 1s through his own ability. But again, I just think the supportive abilities are going to be better, but if you're determined to get a range damaging dominus, this is probably the gun I would personally go for. Next up is an interesting one I'm going to talk about, is the Omniscient Mask. I'm sorry. You can reroll failed hit rolls in the fight phase for friendly Scutari units that are within 6 inches of the bearer of the Omniscient Mask. So this is really pushing again the combat side of Adeptus Mechanicus, which again I am struggling to work out myself. We still lack transporters, we still lack abilities to deep strike in, and especially you need to have your Dominus in with them as well, who is not the greatest in combat as is. But certainly if you've got like a large amount of Scutari units and you're wanting to push them into combat, cool, this is going to be quite helpful. Certainly with the ability, I think it was Greer, well I'll go into the Warlord Trait later on, which I think is Greer, which allows you to do shoot in the shooting phase even if you're at 1 inch of your opponent. This is going to be handy if you really are determined to get that sort of combat element. I'm going to talk about why I'm talking about this one, which is mainly I'm sort of hoping when the Forgeworld rules come out we get more options, specifically hoplites. The rules haven't come out yet. I have bought a bunch of the models and I absolutely love the models and I'm desperate to field them. I hope they get the Scutari keywords. They don't get, I can't remember what the one they were called before. It was like Titanicus or something. Basically they were sort of the protectors of Titans. So they might not get the Scutari rule, but if they do, this is going to be excellent because hoplites being able to reroll 1s, and they are quite a predominantly combat unit, should hopefully be awesome. And I'm just really waiting for when Forgeworld release their rules, and if they're awesome and I want to play a bit more of an aggressive forward attack Ad Mech army, this will be a good relic for that. So again, I'm kind of like, I know I probably maybe shouldn't be discussing it because it's more sort of me speculating in what I personally want, but I think this is a relic if we do begin to see more assault-based Scutari forces for Ad Mech. This is going to be excellent. Again, I'm speculating, but I really like it and I really hope things go my way on that one because it'd be cool, and Forgeworld, get going, it'd be awesome. Next up, I am going to go for a faction specific one, a Forgeworld one, the Eye of, I think that's going to be 11, yep, and it's part of the Eye of 9 Lexicum, yep. Agrippina model only. At the start of each of your shooting phases, pick one enemy vehicle unit within 18 inches of the bearer. You can reroll wound rolls of 1 for friendly Agrippina units that target units that target the unit you picked for the rest of the phase. If the unit you picked is a Chaos vehicle, you can instead reroll failed wound rolls for your friendly Agrippina unit that targets the unit. Ugh. Again, this is another buff relic, and one I particularly like, but really dependent on the enemy force that you are playing against. I don't see this getting much use from like Astra Militarum armies, because they'll probably be keeping their distance from you, as if you're playing a shooting army yourself, that you'll be keeping distance from them. But if you're playing a force that has very assault heavy walkers, such as Space Marines or Chaos, then yeah, you're going to see an advantage where you can go, that walker, that dreadnought, that hellbrute, 18 inches away, I want all my units to re-roll ones when rolling to wound against it. And if it's Chaos, it's going to be even worse. You know, I know that I personally play quite a bit of mech heavy Iron Warriors, and you will basically see a lot of my Mauler Fiends or hellbrutes get picked apart by this one, because every phase you can actually choose a different target, and then you can basically weaken them down with reliable reroll to wounds, which Ad Mech do struggle to get. It's a shame that this is not 24 inches, just 18 inches, because if it was 24 inches I think you'd see a lot more. But again, you know, if you are going to be moving your Tech Priest up and you've got Drone Crawlers blasting away at some of their heavier vehicles, this could be very, very handy, especially against heavy things like monoliths, etc. Reliable rerolls to wounds is something Ad Mech struggle to get, especially in the shooting phase. This really helps with that. No a must have, but really kind of helpful. Next up we have the Solar Flare. This is a Lucius model only, and is once per battle. At the end of any movement phase, the bearer of the Solar Flare can teleport instead of moving normally. When they do so, remove them from the battlefield and then replace them anywhere within 30 inches of their starting position, and more than 9 inches from an enemy model. So this makes sense for the Lucius Stratagem, which is basically teleportation as well. I didn't talk about that one, but it is essentially a lot of teleporting as well. However, extremely useful for the range of movement it gets. I mean, 30 inches is a huge shunt move away, and pretty useful if, like for instance, you have a tactical objective card that requires you to get a point. You can basically go, cool, Tech Priest, got it. And especially useful if you get the card where you have to have your Warlord achieve something, and then you draw another card and you have to take a point, you get extra points. This all but guarantees you will get those extra points. Though then you might move your Tech Priest in a vulnerable position and all but sure he is dead, but generally you might score a whole bunch of points for it. But it's very important as well, because you can do this to really get out of dodge if you're facing a horrendous, you know, combat unit. I mean, I've had now Call in combat with Karn, and in another one he was against another very heavy hitter in the 40k universe. I can't say yet because the battle report hasn't been published, but and it was super messy. So having your Tech Priest be able to just jump out of there is really, really helpful, and maybe quite handy as well, because then you can actually target where they thought their their heavy unit was surrounding your HQ and you couldn't fire them, and they're only targeting your HQ. Now you can. Sneaky, I like it. You can get points, you can get victory points, you can get out of dodge. Really quite cool, like it. Next up, we're going to go into Warlord Traits. So again, this is again an advantage of having the Codex. We now get Warlord Traits that are not part of the rulebook ones. We get a whole bunch of them as well. We get 6 Warlord Traits to choose from that are general ones, and then we get a whole bunch of Forgeworlds ones as well. It's very, very handy. One thing to note is if you've got special characters, which for Ad Mech there is only one, which is called, they've got preset ones already. So let's have a look at some of my favourites, because again I could go into all of them, but this video was already long enough as is. So my favourite one is one I've actually already mentioned already, which is Necro Mechanic. And I'll discuss it now, why I mentioned it earlier and why it synergizes as well. Each time your Warlord uses an ability to repair a friendly model, that model regains 1 additional wound. So out of the Warlord traits, this is my favourite general one because it is an excellent support heavy Warlord trait, and again it goes just so well with the auto cadus of Arcana Land to give you reliable survivabilities to models near your Dominus, and you're always going to have your Dominus around models so they can benefit from the rerolls to hit as is, but now your repair rolls are going to be even better. And I've had a game where I was just getting chunks taken out of me, my Dune Crawlers were getting damaged, but my Tech Priests were just recovering them. This makes it even better. As I said, you know, a minimum of 2 wounds recovered with a maximum of 4, and you get to reroll. Excellent, just really good synergy with this Warlord trait and that relic. Really good. Keep in mind, I believe you can also recover wounds on Castellan robots if you need to be, or Cataphron Breachers or Destroyers. I think they can recover wounds as well, but generally you're going to be going with your you're going to go with your Dune Crawlers probably, maybe Ballistari, and I believe that you can recover wounds on Knights as well, but they traditionally only recover 1 wound. With this, I believe they recover 2 wounds. Correct me if I'm wrong in that one. But generally this is the loadout I would have for a Dominus, is that Warlord trait, which is a general one, so you can use with any Forgeworld, and that relic, which is again a general one, you can use with any Forgeworld. Excellent supportive Dominus if you're going to play quite a supportive heavy army. Next up we have Monitor Malevolence. Yep. Once per battle you can reroll a single hit roll, wound roll or damage roll made for your Warlord. In addition, if your army is battle forged, your Warlord is on the battlefield, roll a d6 each time you or your opponent use a stratagem. On a 6 you gain a command point. So this is very dependent on the size of the game you're playing. The reroll hit, wound or damage is quite handy because it doesn't specify it needs to be the assault phase, which you might get confused by. It can be the shooting phase as well. Now you already reroll hits quite reliably with your Dominus, but you can reroll that wound as well. 1 dice, I mean it's kind of the same as if you're going to use the stratagem that allows you to reroll any 1 dice, but you've got your options there, and it's kind of handy. But if you're playing big games where there are loads of command points to play with, and being able to just siphon on command points from either your stratagems and your opponents can build up command points back to you, and even if you get 2 command points back, that can really help just to use an additional stratagem you weren't planning on. So really handy on big games with loads of command points. If you're playing a small game where you and your opponent are fielding 4 or less command points apiece, maybe not, there's probably better Warlord traits to go with, you know, the one I talked about previously. But generally if you're playing big games, to be able to gain more command points is a chance. Really handy in big games, basically. Next up we're going to go with the Guerrilla Warlord trait, which is a Motionless Clarity. Awesome name, pretty cool, I like it. Models and friendly Guerrilla units within 6 inches of your Warlord can shoot with their assault and rapid fire weapons, even if there is an enemy unit within 1 inch of their own unit. In such circumstances, the model can shoot even if other friendly units are within 1 inch of the same enemy unit. So this is one of the few situations where I say, yeah, you know, I can maybe see a close combat focused Ad Mech army. Certainly if you're having Vanguard push forward with a Warlord, this could be quite handy. Reason being is that if you've got Vanguard in combat with a unit, and you're within 1 inch, then the rad saturation ability does affect them. So your opponent's going to have -1 to their toughness, which certainly helps with a lot of your weapons to wound them, which is really nice. You know, lowering your enemy's toughness is handy, and your guns will then benefit from it, which is really good. Now, there's one thing I'd say in this one. This may not be great because I think you do get -1 to hit as well. In the shooting phase, yeah, you get -1 to hit as well in the shooting phase when you use this ability, I believe, which means you're sort of, I'll need to check that, but it basically means that you're sort of reducing your to hit rolls compared to you're maybe going to get better wound rolls. Generally, if you've got Vanguard pushing forwards, loads of rad saturation, high number of shots and you are in combat, it's going to push up your efficiency on them really good, because basically otherwise you're going to have to flee, you can't shoot, your opponent then just charges you again. Nah, have some shots back, why not? So I quite like this one, very handy, very good ability. Last but not least, I will talk about the Mars Warlord Trait, which is Static Sam Code. Very simple. Add 3 inches to the range of any order abilities on your Warlord datasheet. It's a pretty simple Warlord. As I said, I really like sort of supportive tech priests, supportive HQ units. So adding 3 inches to their order abilities, and I believe that will affect Master of the Machines or Lord of the Machine Cult, which is essentially your repair rolls and your rerolls. Adding that 3 inches, you'd be surprised, makes a big difference. Just means that more units have, and I think certainly for the rerolls you'll need 1 model for a unit to gain the ability, makes it a lot better. So you're going to predominantly see this on your Mars, if you're going to be playing Mars on their HQ. However, it should be noted, if you are playing Mars Forgeworld and you are going to be using this Warlord Trait, you know who does these order abilities better than any Dominus and actually has this Warlord Trait? Call. Now I did want to sort of avoid discussing Call in this one. I've already talked about in a previous video, and I won't talk about him again because not many of his rules I believe have changed, but certainly has gained this Warlord Trait which adds 3 inches to his order abilities and makes it so you get much more rerolls to hits, you can repair more stuff. Generally Call is excellent if you are playing Mars. It's more or less a guarantee you are going to use him, but that extra 3 inches onto your repairs and rerolls, and Call has a bigger base as well, generally makes him even better for his points. I've used this Warlord Trait with Call in a battle report, hasn't gone up yet, but it does give those more rerolls and it's generally excellent. I think I used Benhaddock Override and the Extermination one for the Catapult Destroyers and the Extant Robots, and I had Call rerolling as well. They were quite far away but they were within it. Was truly destructive, was really good. Hopefully you'll see that battle report really soon. So if you are going to go down the route of you're going to use Mars and you're going to use this Warlord Trait, just field Call. He's an excellent model as well, and really cool. I don't want to say sort of just go with special characters, and I did say I want to avoid discussing Call, but yeah, Mars, go with this Warlord Trait. You're going to get extra buffs and it's really cool. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly go over some updates from Index to the Codex next. I'm not going to discuss them all. What I'd encourage you to do is read the Codex, see what you like in it and just update yourself with some of the rules. But I'm going to discuss some of the key changes. So firstly, Vanguard and Rangers got points reduction. Not huge amounts for both of them, they were both different point reductions. I won't say what they are, have a look. And but it is, because they are your sort of go-to troops that are going to be covering the battlefield with higher amount of models, it is always a welcome addition to have reduced points, and they're no longer the same points as each other, so that's something to think about as well. One is cheaper than the other now, rather than being both the same points, but they both of them did get a reduction. Excellent. Castellan Robots Protector Protocol got a slight difference in terms of its wording. I think beforehand it was basically you could just shoot your weapons twice, which meant you could basically sort of go, right, I'm going to shoot each gun twice, so I'm going to choose different units for each gun. I think it was worded so it was like the Con Berserker rules where you get, do the fight phase twice, and I think this people looked at it as you go out the shoot phase twice. Now it's basically, you double the amount of shot characteristics in your shots. So for the heavy weapon they've got turns into 2 heavy D3 or heavy 6 or whatever the heavy phosphor blaster is. It basically becomes to a higher amount of that. So yeah, it's just making sure that you don't have so much ability to pick off. There are ways to sort of play about with it, but still it's an important wording change. Make sure you get that right for Castellan Robots. I really like them, very handy for the Protector Protocol, but I did get a slight wording change to make it a little bit more sense if you ask me. And lastly, I'm going to say that Destroyers got an extra attack from I think 1 to 2. great. If you're using destroyers as an assault unit, why? Okay, I don't know. They do great in shooting. They're absolutely excellent now. But if you're in that situation, they are in combat, then just remember they've got 2 attacks now. Great. So that's it. I think that was a pretty long video. I may have gone on for a while, but I did try and cover as much of the Codex as I could. You know, let me know what you thought of it. You know, did I cover all the artifacts correctly? Is there ones I should have covered? Is there stratagems I should have covered? What ones do you see best? Have you had any warlord traits or stratagems that have been key to the way you field? Let me know. I'm always keen to hear about people's play styles, especially when we're talking about special abilities and all these rules here. Certainly in my Chaos reviews, some of the stuff I got in the comments was excellent. People giving loadouts and abilities to play, which I really enjoyed. So please comment away, tell me I did a terrible review and there was things that I should have discussed, stratagems, etc. And although it may seem mean, is informative for myself of playstyles and for our audience, just to get your views as well. I'm going to end on a special note. I'm going to say a big thanks to a local guy, Rob West. He's made a lot of comments, a lot of videos, and he actually contributed a bunch of new Ad Mech models for me, which is really cool. Thank you very much for that, and I'm going to hopefully get them painted and added into my force soon. One thing to know as well, he actually also recently played David in one of our local shops, and he found out why David is a difficult opponent to play against. Yeah, if you notice, David is a very good player and he's sometimes challenging. Well, we've now had an audience member have a go playing David, and he agreed that David is quite difficult to play against. So I'm glad that you know, someone has also seen, you know, David is a very good player. Sometimes doesn't play competitive lists, but he's a very smart player, and every victory I get against him is, well, you know, it's very good. So I just want to say a big thank you to Rob West. That was excellent. Hopefully I'll get a game against you soon as well, as with all of you, but we're just working on sort of how we're going to film that with audience people coming on as well. So thanks again, guys. Please comment, share, like and subscribe as usual, and we'll see you in another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.